varied, diverse practice. I did lots of things. Of course, individual treatment for depression and anxiety and things of that nature, which is typical. I did do a lot of marital counseling, and so on. And I did, in fact, a great deal of parenting training, helping parents do a better job at raising their kids. In the latter part of my practice, I pivoted, as I like to say, and I began doing a lot more in the legal world, in what we call the forensic arena. I was in family law, so I did custody evaluations, parenting coordinating. I did a lot of work with personal injury attorneys, um, and other med malpractice attorneys and so forth. So in the latter part of my practice, I was basically a psychological legal expert. Also have done some writing. I've at this point, I think I'm done. I've written 8 books. Uh, reference here today, since we'll be talking about parenting. My first book back, oh my gosh, in the 80s, but is still relevant today, believe me, is entitled Who's Raising Whom? Which is something we're going to talk about. My second book, the follow-up to that, is Coping with Your Adolescent. And I like to say, if you haven't read the first one, you certainly are going to need the second one. The third one is the marriage book, How Come I Love Him But Can't Live With Him. The fourth one is the book that kind of referenced the pivoting. It occurred during this pivoting time in my career. I was about, halfway through, if you will. I had 15, 20 years left. And it's entitled Too Busy Earning a Living to Make Your Fortune. And and that one has done fairly well. The next one is a book I did with a friend and colleague of mine. He's a business analyst, and the title of that one is Overcoming Your Negotiophobia. And basically talking about how in life we're negotiating, like it or not, all the time, with our partner, with our kids, with the mailman or woman, with our boss, with coworkers, the person trying to sell us a car, et cetera, and such. Basically, the theme of that is it doesn't hurt to ask. My wife is very good at that, very good at that. She's, even though pushing 80 like I am, she's in shape, very cute, and so on. And many times we'll go places like at the airport or whatever. Are there any like better seats available for us, a senior and so forth? And I can't tell you how many times we get favorable experiences out of that. My second last book that came out during COVID is entitled Love Your Child More Than You Hate Your Ex. This refers to a lot of the work I did in the family court. And the last book that I've done came out about 9 months ago now, is entitled Silver Sex: Insights into Senior Sexuality. As a matter of fact, I was one of the keynote speakers last week at the Book and Author show in Tucson, Arizona, to a crowd of about 150. So, at any rate, but here we're to talk about a very important topic, and that is parenting.
So, Larry, let me ask you my first question after that wonderful introduction and your credentials and everything that you've been up to. Parenting. What do you think and what have you seen is missing from, let's start with new parents.
Well, to start off with, often say this, and I mean it, very seriously. Uh, to me, parenting is extremely important. It's one of the most significant things that an adult is going to do in their life. Uh, in our last conversation, we talked about choosing a proper mate, and clearly that is quite significant and will play a major role in your life and in your happiness and development and so forth. But very close to that uh, is the responsibility of raising a human being. And it's always just frustrated me actually that so many people go about this significant, important task without any training, none whatsoever. Uh, Maybe talk to somebody here and there, but basically are parenting by the seat of their pants. In fact, the research will tell you that unless you do get trained in this important job, you are basically going to parent the way you were parented, be it good or bad, but because that's all you know, and that's what you're going to fall back on. So if you weren't happy with how you were reared as a kid, guess what? Dollars to donuts, like it or not, you'll be doing the same kind of thing. So it's important that parents get some training in this very important task, especially for new parents, young parents. There are books out there, like mine, of course. There are parenting groups. Uh, I I volunteer my time um, at a facility that every quarter does puts on a program called Parenting University, if you will. And I'm the kickoff speaker. And I spend an hour and a half or more kind of detailing some of the basic skills and things to consider well, as a parent. And this program has been quite successful. It's been running for better part of 15 years now.
I look at some of the people I speak to who are seasoned parents. They've been parents for a number of years. And one thing that they shared to me that's common amongst the women that I work with is they tried their best, but they knew there was things that they didn't know. But this was in hindsight. When they're going through it, they had the best of intentions, but they didn't necessarily have the best information. And when I say best information is because, to your point, they're pulling it from their own experiences. They knew what they didn't like as a child. And for a lot of us as adults, that stayed with us, the conditional love, the people pleasing, and so on. So they want to make sure that their children didn't grow up with that same experience. But I think sometimes what happened from their perspective is that they were trying to overcompensate in ways that maybe weren't as beneficial as they thought it would be. When it comes from the parenting lens, do you see some parents overcompensating in one way and then it's detrimental in another way for that child?
All the time. It's a great point. Yes. Again, without any training. Again, remember, this is starting with a perception that you made when you were a child, okay? Which, as you know, 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, uh, when they become adults, don't really have clear perspectives. That's very sure, very sure. But a lot of parents, when they get a lot of adults when they become parents, might have this perspective, that my mom or dad was too strict or something of that nature. And I'm not going to do that. Okay. And so what they do is they kind of go the other way, so to speak, and are too permissive, or even worse, indulgent with their kids. And then they've got a mess and so forth. And so it's no better, and frankly, it's worse. Truth be told, not that I certainly promote over strictness, but if we have to choose between being strict versus being indulgent for the emotional benefit of the child, believe me, it may sound strange, you're better off being strict than indulgent. Because kids who are raised in an indulgent environment end up having really low self-esteem. They don't know how to solve problems. Uh, the parent is basically saying, I'm doing all of this for you because I don't believe you can do it. So their self-esteem is low. They're not very industrious, and so on. They don't tend to think out of the box, and so forth. I remember I worked with lots of what I call the trust babies, if you will. Where they came from wealthy families and money just poured in, and yet, if they ran into some kind of problem, it was like, I don't know what to do with this, and so on. So, yeah. So basically, how you were raised is important. And as I said, if you don't get some training, pretty much you're either going to do that or try to work against it to the opposite negative effect.
So that would be like the child of authoritative parents growing up to be a parent that does gentle parenting, for example.
Well, gentle would be okay, but more indulgent. Yes.
So indulgent meaning that, just so I tie this all together. So for me and maybe you and so many others who are, let's say, over the age of 35, it's likely that our parents were authoritative parents. They were strict. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry for, be home before the streetlight, so on and so forth. They ruled with an iron hand, right? The man and the woman. Now, if we take that experience because we're still looking from a child's eyes and we're saying that I didn't like this because it was very restrictive, it was very preventative, I didn't get to do what Johnny down the street did, I didn't get to do what Maria at school did because my parents were very confining, for lack of a better word, even though today we would call it boundaries. I grow up now, instead of having an adult lens for my childhood experiences, I still have the childlike lens. And now I don't want to repeat that. So what I do is I let my child do whatever it is that they want because I want them to have absolute freedom. Because as a child, I didn't have that. The problem with that, from what I'm understanding, Larry, is that if you don't have boundaries, if you don't have rules, then you're opening that child to basically do whatever it is they want, and they may not have the guidance, they may not have the wisdom, they may not have the experience to choose wisely. Would that be an accurate interpretation?
Absolutely. Right on. The parenting uh, uh, philosophy has changed 180 degrees in my life, if you will. When I first started in practice, and this is now mid 70s, I used to caution parents about the perils of paddling, not just spanking, but paddling, with a stick, with a big wooden paddle and so on. When I when I retired back a handful of years ago, a few years back, um, I was talking with parents about there needs to be some logical consequences for certain behaviors. Um, Let me give you a great example because this just happened a little while back, a couple of months back. I was visiting my son in Oregon, and he has two younger kids, and the younger kids were part of a preschool group, and they were having an event in the park, and the kids were playing in this big, large sandbox. Okay? And I was playing with them and so forth, and the kids were running around and so forth. And then I saw this event. Okay. There was one of the kids, about three or four, was beginning to climb up this pretty high slide. There were probably 10 steps to the slide. And but he was going rather slowly. It was high. I was a little surprised there was a slide that high, about 8 feet high, really, and so on. And there was obviously a sibling of one of these preschool kids, probably 7 or 8, at the bottom of the stairs, impatiently trying to tell this kid, "Come on, get up there," and so forth. Well, after a couple of seconds, I guess he didn't think the kid was going up fast enough. So he reached up and grabbed the kid by his belt or something and pulled him. And the kid fell down about 3 feet, fortunately onto the sand. So he didn't hurt himself, could have. He wasn't hurt, okay? But he let out a scream, of course, and so on. Meanwhile, the older kid just scurries up the slide and comes down. Now, the mother of the victim, comes and rescues him and comforts him very appropriately. And the kid is crying, but comforts him, and that was perfectly right. This kid deserved some comfort, because he was mistreated and so on. And then they walk off. Then the mother of the perpetrator comes and takes, and she apparently saw the same thing. She comes with him and hugs him and says, "Billy, you have to be more careful." And I looked at that and I go, "What? This kid, could have broken another child's back with this behavior." Okay. Now, he doesn't need to be throttled, but certainly there needed to be an appropriate kind of consequence, like you're not playing in the sandbox anymore. You go sit there on the bench. Something of that nature. Okay. There needed to be a consequence for that significant inappropriate behavior. And frankly, today, that's lacking. It really is. I see it. I see it all the time. young, entitled people who don't give a damn. And largely, I accredit it to this new philosophy here that no, we don't discipline our kids. Well, yes, we do. We should. Now, we should, of course, and I'll get to this, I'm sure. Obviously, recognize them when they behave appropriately, but sometimes a misbehavior is significant enough, that it requires a consequence. I mean, there, my older son now is 50. I can't believe it. But when he was 16, we had a rule. He had his car. We got him his own car because he was very active in school. He was in sports and so forth. And people said, "Oh, you're spoiling him." I said, "Heck, spoil him. Heck, I'm spoiling me." I mean, he was getting up for practice at 5 in the morning. They were going to meets, very early to get the bus and so forth. Now, I went to the meet later, but I had another hour or two of sleep. So anyhow, one rule we had with the car was only one passenger when you're driving. The reason for that is I didn't want him to be distracted. You get three, four guys, young guys in a car, and pretty soon they're messing around and so forth. They're playing around, playing the radio top blast. You get distracted. Okay. Not to mention, God forbid, there's an accident and you've got 4 or 5 people in the car. The liability could exceed, your coverage. Okay. So the rule was one passenger. And he said, okay, fine. Well, one day I was coming home from work, from my office, and I'm coming home for dinner. And I look ahead down the road and I see my son's car. So I kind of speed up, to just, come up next to him. And I look, he's got two people in the front seat, one guy sitting on the gun, one guy's lap, and four kids seated in the back seat that are supposed to have only two. And I looked at him and I said, "Josh, home." And I sped up. And by the time he rolled in home, I had the steering wheel lock in my hands. The kids got out. I didn't say a word. I put the steering wheel lock on the steering wheel, making it undrivable, and I said, "It will be here for a week. And the next time you pull this, it'll be a month." And I walked off. And then he said, "But Dad, how do I get these kids home?" I said, "That's not my problem."
So let me ask you, Larry, since you mentioned that and you mentioned there's consequences and you set that tone and that line, what do you then think are some of the obstacles parents are facing when it comes to holding their children, no matter the age, accountable and responsible for behaviors?
Well, somehow they've come to believe that it's a bad thing. It's not. Now, notice, I didn't scream my head off, okay, and act like a wild banshee or whatever. I don't know, because if when parents are screaming, kids aren't listening. All they're thinking is, "Boy, my mom or dad, they're nuts. They're screaming like crazy and so on." No, but I was loud, yes, and I was direct, and so on, and I applied a particular consequence, what we call a natural consequence, uh, like. Right now, you didn't follow the rule of the car, you don't get to drive it. See, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, it caused lots of difficulty with him. I mean, he had to get to school. Now he had to get someone to drive him, or he could bike or whatever. I don't know. But all I do know is that, yes, uh, he understood that what he did was inappropriate, broke the rules, lied, and had to serve penance, if you will.
There was someone in my life that she has two children, we're acquaintances, and she has a boy and a girl. Well, they're adults now, so a man and a woman. They're in their mid. The daughter is younger, so the daughter's in her early 20s, and the son is older, and he's in his mid to late 20s. So they're getting up, finishing school, so on and so forth. One thing she shared with me is that she refers to her children as her best friend. She refers to the daughter as the best friend, and she refers to the son because she had the son at a younger age. I think she was like 19 or something. She refers more to her son as a friend. And I share this because something I notice is that some parents seem to indicate that they're more of a friend to their child versus being a parent. And they set that because of the way they speak about their responsibilities, the way they act around them, the way they even spend time together. It's more of a we're buddies versus I'm the parent and you're the child. And I think sometimes, and I'll get input on this, this creates a dynamic where the child is growing up to view you as not a parent. They know you gave birth to them or they know you created them, but the boundary is we're friends. So we can go out and get drunk together. We can go out and party together. We can go out and pick up boys and girls together. We can do everything that we would do with a normal friend. When it comes to that boundary or that identity being set that I'm your parent, I'm terrain, I'm so on, do you see some parents struggling with trying to be their parent, sorry, trying to be more of a friend to their child versus being a parent to their child?
Yes, all the time, in certain circumstances. Uh, Typically, it's more common in a one-parent household. Uh, and we do see that. And if and as you were suggesting, if you're blurring the lines here, between parent and friend, it's also confusing to the child. I've had cases like that where the kids were still young and in the home and so on, and usually it's the mom with the custody and so on. And again, on one minute you're sharing your some personal things that your child shouldn't hear about or know about, and then maybe 10 minutes later you say, "Okay, go clean your room." Well, wait a minute here. What are you? Are you my friend? Are you my confidant, or are you my now you're my boss? I mean, it doesn't work, and it shouldn't. But sometimes it does happen. Like I said, in divorce situations, or in single parent situations. And now, of course, once they become adults, and they have lives of their own, well, yes, you can become a little more friendly, if you will, because, there comes a time, where you're not telling them what to do at all. In fact, I do speak a lot on grandparenting because I use one, and so on. And one of the things I say is that, offering unsolicited advice is not usually very well received by adult children. So, and I'm an expert, frankly, on a lot of things, on parenting, marriage, and so forth. You think they would come to ask me? No, I'm just I'm just Papa, and so forth. And I get it. I understand, and so on. So, am I friendly with my sons? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I go out. I'll go and work out with them if I'm visiting them. Unfortunately, I don't live in my hometown. Uh, but yes, we'll do things, and of course, we go out, as a family and such. But yes, that's not advice at all. And parents, I mean, look, if if you've been divorced, or you're raising a kid or two on your own, and it's difficult, very much so. You don't have a lot of time. You can't spend a lot of time with other adults. I mean, these kids take up a lot of your time and space, and so it's tempting, particularly if they're now, let's say, pre-adolescence or early adolescence, to sit down and share. I get it, and the kids will listen. Yeah. Remember, they don't know if it's good or bad. This is the only time they've been through this situation. Excuse me.
Sometimes, yeah, to your point, Larry, sometimes I look at the struggles that parents go through, and both parents, let's say in an ideal situation, you have both parents at home and they're raising one child. We live in an age where both parents have to work. Many of them work long hours, more than the 40, more than the 37.5. Now we will live in a digital era, social media era, that maybe the amount of time that the parents spend with their child, that child is spending the same amount of time with social media or a device. So now their attention is split between mom and dad in a heterosexual relationship and television, iPad, and the internet. When that child is growing and forming their identity or who they want to be, instead of it primarily being a blend between both parents, now some people may say that it's a blend between the two parents and what they're seeing online, right? When they're coming together now to form that identity, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing? Because maybe they're getting two different messages from two different sources that they're spending an equal amount of time with.
Well, again, you're right, and I I view this, uh, what you're referring to, this a lot electronic stuff that kids can have access to, as very dangerous, and so on. You're absolutely right. Parents, I believe, need to restrict it, and so on. Yeah, frankly, I think it's rotting their brain, and so on. These kids are accustomed to, everything's quick, fast, 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 and then they go to school, and they're supposed to do algebra that takes that takes 5-10 minutes to solve an equation. Well, that's not fast, fast, fast. And they're going, whatever, what do I want to do that for? And so on. There's one other point here I really like to make, and this refers to younger children. Uh, I often like to ask parents, what's the most important thing we can give our kids? And usually I hear, love, uh, sometimes discipline, respect, guidance, and so on. And of course, who can argue with that? That's true. But then I say, I agree with that, but how does it look to the child? How does this 8-year-old child know they're getting love, respect, guidance, discipline, etc.? Well, bottom line is they know it by the time and attention the parent individually provides to that child. So the answer to my question is, what is the most valuable thing parents can give to their kids? It's individual, undivided attention. That's like gold, if you will. No question about it. I'm hard set on that. But here's the crux of this. When do most parents provide this individual attention? And you know what the research shows? when the child is misbehaving.
So in
So
other words, when they're doing something wrong and not something right.
exactly, right? Yeah, this is what's going on in many homes today. Okay? And so what the child is learning, of course, is that frankly, it pays off to be bad. Now, when I say that, please understand, when I say bad, the child doesn't know it's bad. I mean, how many homes have they lived in? Just one. They don't know what's right or wrong, good or bad, normal or abnormal. What do they know? Their view on life when they're children is very narrow. Only what they've experienced in their short little lifetime. So they want their parents' attention. And if they come to learn that when I'm good, when I'm quiet, when I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, I basically get ignored. But when I act out and do this or whatever, or poke my sister or something, in comes mom or dad and so forth, and now I'm the center of this whole thing. What are we doing? And what happens is we have lots of homes that are really in stress. It's stressful. I can't tell you how many parents in my sessions have said, I love my kid, but I don't like him. You know? And the reason for that is they're stuck in what I refer to as a negative attention trap. Okay? And it keeps getting worse because as the parent gets frustrated putting out all these fires that the kid sets for them, so to speak, there's less time they're going to provide them when the child is behaving well. And so you see what we have going here? It's not a good fit. So one of the most important things, in addition to let there be appropriate logical consequences to significant inappropriate behavior, like breaking the rule of driving or hurting a child because you want to get up a slide faster. The other important piece here is to catch your kids when they're good. That's when you pay attention to them. Don't be on the lookout for bad, don't be a policeman looking out for bad behavior, but rather be a parent who's looking out for good behavior. And that's when you interact. So if your kid is quietly, I don't know, reading or playing a game or playing nicely with his or her sibling, that's when you walk up and go, hey, push, hey guys, I really like the way you're playing so cooperatively and taking turns and so forth. This is really nice. When you're finished with this game, let's go in the kitchen and let's bake brownies together. Now you were going to bake brownies anyhow, but now you see you're using this as a reinforcer, okay? In other words, as a reward for this good behavior. And now the kid goes, oh, this is interesting. When I'm reading or when I'm doing my chores, mother goes in and sees, Billy cleaning his room. She goes, oh my God, look how nice this room looks. You are the best cleaner. When you're done with that, let's go play old maid or something. Okay? And the kid goes, oh, do you see what? In other words, what I train parents to do is to be responsive to the child's behavior. It's called behavioral psychology. Okay? And so what a good parent does is objectively recognize this behavior, decide if it's good, bad, or or whatever, and then formulate a response. If it's good, then you interact. You give that gold, remember, the valuable time to that child, doing whatever it is he's doing, and you do it specifically. You let him know, oh, you're a lovely child. I know. I love the way you can sit quietly and read a book. You're going to be so smart when you grow up. Okay. Now he knows, well, sitting, reading, or gosh, you guys playing checkers together so cooperatively and so forth. It does my heart good. I love to see you guys playing, nicely together, etc. When you're done, we'll do this and so on. Okay? Now, for some, I said good, bad, or indifferent. A lot of kids will do things for attention, like whine, right? It's not fair, stuff like that. And what are they looking for? Why are they doing it?
I would say they're looking for attention, validation. Feed me attention and a validation.
Exactly. They're looking for attention, control. Okay. Yeah. And how often do parents fall into that trap? Oh, it's not fair. And then you go, you're not going to talk to me that way. And the kid goes, ha, got her. You know, no. The best response to that kind of behavior in children when they're not bleeding, they're not choking, they haven't really hurt themselves. They're just being a pain in the butt. They're whining, I don't want to do that. The best response to that behavior is walk out of the room.
Some That's called what? The self-soothing, right? The bottle within.
Well, the technical term in behavioral psychology is called extinction. It's a funny term, but the point is you're not providing any reinforcement to it. Okay. My kids knew, when they started something, whatever, and and all of a sudden, where's dad? You know, it was like, oh, and they realized when they're behaving in that manner, I'm not buying in. Okay. So you see, I'm manipulating. Okay. And that's what, that may not sound good, but that's what parents need to do. They need to properly manipulate their children by teaching them that being responsible, being independent, okay, being loving, being caring is rewarding.
So let me ask you then, Larry, how can a parent create the balance between acknowledging positive behavior and maybe reinforcing that
Right?
and acknowledging not so positive behavior and, to your point, not feeding into that?
Well, again, it's your choice. It's your assessment. It's the parent's assessment. So you're doing these assessments all the time. You're objectively observing the child. If the child is behaving in a manner that you desire, you reinforce it, or make a nice comment, or do something fun, or tickle him, or whatever, give him a kiss, or things like that, letting him or her know that you appreciate this kind of behavior, so they know what kind of behavior they're talking about. It's not like good boy, what do they do? I don't know, and so on. Again, now if it's this, whining, crying, it's not fair, let's say procrastination. Okay. Um, my kids were normal. They procrastinated. I remember, gosh, my younger son was a bit of a procrastinator, and and we had talked about it. But one morning, it was school day. He had his breakfast and so forth, and we had set the clock. We had one of those big paper clocks, and he could next to a real one, so he knew when he needed to be ready and so forth. And he was just sitting in his room. He had his underwear on, a pair of shorts, but no shirt, no shoes, no socks, and so on. And up came his ride up the driveway, honked the horn, and all of a sudden he yells, "I'm late!" Okay. I simply walked in, grabbed his shoes, grabbed his socks, grabbed his lunch, and so on, walked him out into the car, placed him on his seat, put everything on his lap, and said, "Have a good day." The girl sitting next to him said, "Why is he naked?" Well, he wasn't naked, but he didn't have a shirt on. Why was he naked? And of course, my son had a kind of feeling. And so on, I said goodbye. So here again, okay, he was irresponsible. He didn't get himself prepared, on time, and he knew it. Okay. Now I could have come in there and to get your, but what is that teaching him? That's not what I want him to learn. I want him to learn that when you're not responsible and you're not prepared, not such nice things happen. You get put in a car half dressed. That's uncomfortable. It's not going to kill you, but that's uncomfortable. And following that, we didn't have that problem anymore.
So let me ask you one final question before I let you go today. I want to give you three wishes. And these are three things you could wish that people knew, especially parents. I know this is tough. I know it's going to be scary because we're about to give them knowledge from the heavens, like I've said. What are three things you wish seasoned parents knew about r- helping new parents with their parenting journey and why?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a big believer, of course, in catching them when they're good. That's the focus. Um, Secondly, use something like walking away, ignoring extinction for minor, misbehaviors. And thirdly, be prepared to uh, use a logical, consequence, one that makes sense, not screaming, not spanking, and so forth, but one that makes sense when the child does something, significantly wrong. Finally, what guided me and my wife on a regular basis, and we talked about it, is that my goal and my wife's goal was to raise an independent, responsible, caring young man. And that's what guided me in my parenting with my sons. And I'm happy to say